Why, hello all you happy hobby hunters. Welcome to my channel. I am your host, Brad Claybaugh, and you have come to Brad's Boredom Busters. This is the channel that explores all kinds of arts and crafts. So if you're looking for something new to do, this is the place for you. All right, so before I let my alter ego Buster show you how to subscribe to our channel, I'd like to take care of a little business as well. I started this channel about 8 months ago, and I've had great success and great response from you viewers. I've achieved 245 subscribers at this point. So thank you all for being interested in what I have to share with all of you. So let's get on with the video. Buster, show the people how to subscribe. So today's video, as I promised, is going to be a paintbrush caddy. And so I am going to show you how to make this. I'm going to teach you how to make your own pattern because everyone has a different collection of paintbrushes, different sizes, different amounts. And so if I posted a pattern, it may not really work for you. It may not be big enough. It may be too big. And so I'm going to teach you how to make your own pattern depending on how many brushes and what types of brushes you have. So I made this paintbrush caddy because I'm starting to dabble in oil paints and I'm trying to teach myself how to do that. And so I have a large collection of acrylic paint brushes as well because I've been dealing with acrylic paints for quite a long while. I've painted quite a few landscapes and other types of paintings. Recently, I've been trying my hand at abstract painting as well. And so I have quite a few supplies that I would like to organize more efficiently. It keeps the brushes in a better condition for a longer period of time if you keep them in a caddy such as this. All right, so let's get over to the work table and I'll show you how to lay out a pattern for your own paintbrush caddy. So the materials that you will need for this project obviously is fabric, but you will need enough to have 3 pieces of fabric and then actually 4 for the strap to do this project. And so after you make the pattern, then you can determine how much fabric you need at that point, because like I say, everyone's going to make a different size caddy depending on how many brushes you're trying to store yourself. So you'll need your fabric, scissors to cut the fabric, or if you have a cutting mat and a rolling cutter, then you can use that. But then use a different scissor for cutting out the pattern because you don't want to use your good fabric scissors for cutting paper. That'll dull it. You need a pencil to draw out the pattern as well. And the pattern is going to be very simple. It's basically just 3 rectangles, a yardstick. And then for my pattern making, I use what they call rosin paper. It's a good heavyweight paper. It's great for pattern making. And so you'll need something to draw your pattern out on. And then you'll need the brushes that you'll be obviously using them to create the pattern. You'll lay out your paper and then lay out the brushes on there to determine the size of your fabric and your pattern. And then you'll use that to cut your fabric. So anyway, so that's basically what you'll need. And then like I say, you'll need a sewing machine. This would be a kind of a hard project to hand stitch because we're going to be doing zigzags to create the pockets for the brushes. That makes that very strong, and so it'll hold up over many years of use. So first thing is just find your tallest brush. And in this case, it's probably, I've got these for abstract painting. They're all about the same size. I've got this one that's fairly tall as well. So you want to measure from the bottom of the brush and then give it another, say, 2 inches, and then add, say, another inch for seam allowance beyond that. So in this case, for me, so this brush is 8.5. So if we went to, say, 10, I think if the whole piece was 11 inches tall, that would be plenty. The best way I like to try and figure out the size of my pattern is just take your brushes and start laying them out in the order that you want them in the caddy. Okay, something like that, approximately. And what I did for that, my original one, is I made it much longer than I needed for a couple reasons. Like I say, it gives you extra pockets that you can stitch into it. So if you purchase other brushes in the future, you have room for it. But also, by making it longer, you definitely know you have enough material, and then you can always cut and then stitch that closed at the end. So it looks like we will want, let me say, to give myself some extra, at least 30 inches, make at least 11.5 inches tall. All right, so now that we've got those numbers in your head, you can always mark them down on your pattern paper. So it will be a 11.5 tall by 30 inches long. All right, so you can set all your brushes aside now. All right, so now we'll take that's all we'll need for the rosin paper, at least for now. And then this paper's got quite a memory to it, so there's a couple ways to try and get this roll out of it. You can try and backwards roll it onto itself. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Or you can turn it over, and if you have a table like mine, you can try and pull it along its edge. There we go. That's a little better. Kind of calms it down a little bit. Okay, so now, so one other item that you're going to need that I forgot to mention at the beginning is something to mark your fabric with. You know, you're going to transfer the size of this pattern to your fabric. Oh, almost forgot. We have to cut this down to 30 inches as well. Almost forgot. Okay, so all right, so yeah, as I was saying, you'll need something to mark off your fabric with. Because I'm marking on black, I am going to use white chalk. You can use any kind of fabric marking you know, a washable marker, or actually there's fabric markers that fade in the air, so you can use that as well. All right, so before we lay out the pattern on our fabric, you want to make sure, because some of my fabric is new and some of it was out of my own stash, and it's bound to have wrinkles. And just to make everything easier to work on, iron it out first, steam iron it, definitely, especially if it's new fabric off a bolt. It's all folded and has a hard crease down the center. So iron it, steam iron it to get all that out so it lays as flat as possible. Makes everything easier to work on and more accurate when you're laying out your pattern. Okay, so let's get on with marking out the fabric. So we want 2 pieces of fabric that are going to be the size of your pattern, or a little larger, obviously, so you can have room to mark it on the fabric. Piece of grunge I'm using here is brand new, and so it's a full yard, and it's rather big, so it's easier to lay that out first. Get rid of that. There we go. So I've got that. Let's pull it all the way there. Okay. There we go. So I've got that first. And then we can lay our... So this print will be the outside of the caddy. Let's lay that out. And you're probably best to keep all this organized is to pin it together. Seeing these 2 pieces are going to be the same size. So I actually decided it's because the wrong side of this print is so light that my chalk probably wouldn't show up very well for me. So I decided to put it face up, but the grunge is face down. Like I say, it doesn't matter on this, seeing it's just a rectangle that you're making, so which side is up or down. That's just your personal preference. All right, there we are. We're all pinned, so that way things don't move around. All right. So take your pattern and lay that out. And I will go edge to that edge. There we are. All right, let's get that in frame better for you. And if your paper, kind of like mine, is still a little bit wanting to be fussy about curling, you can actually pin that in place too. And that'll help make life a little simpler too as you're marking it out. I don't know if any of you are new subscribers. If you haven't seen the video of my owl pin cushions, you could check that out. That does have a pattern that you can download. Okay, so there we are. We're all stabilized. So now we can mark out our pattern. So I had a straight cut on the bottom of my print, so I laid this out right to the bottom of it, but we will mark that so we can cut the other fabric as well. So that's all you need for that. And then when it comes to the inside piece, which I have here, so the same way that we took our tallest brush, then you actually want to take one of your shorter brushes and measure that out. And that for me, and you could measure actually from the top of the ferrule down to the bottom of the handle, which is 6.5 inches. And so you want to add, say, a good 1/4 inch on both ends of that. Let's make it, make it 8 inches actually for this one. The two pieces of fabric that become the outside of the caddy, we cut that at a length of 30 inches. So we can cut this inner piece, go the whole length of the yardstick. We'll go to 36 inches on this. And that'll give us more than enough material. Okay, and that is that. So now we can cut those pieces out. You can do it on with a rolling cutter on a cutting mat. It's all straight lines, so I think I'll just use my fabric scissors for these. So I've got the fabric scissors. We will trim these down to size. All right, here's the inner piece. That'll become the pockets. Set that aside. All right, we can take the pattern off our other two pieces. Okay, so there's the outer and the inner piece of our caddy. You can unpin those. All right, so we've got those three pieces. Then the only other thing you need to cut is material for the strap. I have this remnant left over. So the strap is kind of up to the individual how thick you want to make it. It also depends on the size of Velcro that you have. I think I will make this 2 inches is plenty. But you want to leave a seam allowance for this, so let's make it 2.5. I will use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And kind of like everything else with this, it depends on how many brushes, how thick things are going to be. So I will make the strap out of this whole piece and then cut it to the size I need when I have the main body of the caddy created. Okay. All right, so that'll be the strap eventually. Okay, so that's all the pieces cut, ready to be sewed together. So let's get over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to put it together. Okay, gang, we're here at my sewing machine. So I've got our two outer pieces, the front and the inside lining, pinned together. They're pinned right sides together. And then I marked off a 4-inch gap. So we'll start stitching here, finish here. I left this gap. This is where we will pull it right sides out when we're finished stitching around. Okay, so, and I've got my thread loaded in, bobbin and top thread are the same color. I'm using kind of a golden brown. That way, one, it'll show up on the darker fabric when I'm stitching, and two, it'll be a nice complementary color to the gold that's on the front of my primary pattern. Okay, let's get going. I say 1/4 inch seam allowance and back stitch when you start, and then when you come around to the other marked point, then back stitch there to give it strength, so when you're pulling the fabric through, your stitches don't tear out. All right, let's go. Okay, so there we are. We made it all the way around. So now we can pull our pins and pull everything through the gap that we left, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so after you've got your face and lining stitched together and then pulled right sides out, and take one of my paint brushes and reached inside the opening that we left and reached all the way into all the 4 corners to poke those out before I ironed it, and then iron it out flat. And then you take the hem of the front and back of the caddy, fold those under, and then iron that down flat. And then when we make the strap that'll go around the caddy to hold it together, that will get placed in this gap and then face stitched down. So you just leave that alone for now. So set that aside, and then grab the material that you have cut for your strap. And that's, for me, it's the same as the inside and outside of my caddy. So put those right sides together and then stitch both long ends and one short end. Leave the other short end open completely, and then pull that right sides out. Okay, so let's get this stitched up. And I'm not bothering to pin this. You can if you like, if you feel more comfortable that way. All right, so then take and turn that right side out, poke out the 2 corners that you have, and then iron that flat the same as you did with the main body of the caddy. Okay, so then the next piece to sew up is what's going to be the interior pockets. And what we want to do with this, take this over to your ironing board, roll the hem about 1/4 inch, iron that down, and then come back and stitch that around. And just like the strap, you just have to do 3 sides. We'll leave one end undone because that'll more than likely get cut off, and then we can turn that under and stitch it down at the time of finish. All right, so there we are. I've ironed over the hem all the way around and left one short end undone. If you're concerned about loose threads unraveling in the future, you could double roll that and iron that, double that up like that and then iron it down and then stitch it. As long as you've calculated and left yourself enough fabric to do that, that's perfectly okay. You could do that along just the top edge alone, and the other two sides wouldn't have to be treated that way. For this one, I'm not going to do that. I'm not concerned about that. Once it's top stitched down, I believe it'll control the unraveling just fine. So at this point, we will top stitch along the top edge. That'll just be a simple straight stitch. All right, so now that we've got that top hem stitched, now we can piece it together with the body of the caddy. So now we're going to sew the pocket fabric into the lining of the caddy, and we've got the opening for the strap. That will be down at the far end. So this is the closed end of the caddy. And so essentially, if you're laying it out, the closed end of the caddy is on your right hand. The open end for the strap is on the left hand. So then your pocket fabric sits into the right bottom corner and will stitch along the short end and along the bottom, and then we'll lay out the pockets for the paintbrushes. And at this point, we are also changing from straight stitch to zigzag. And I recommend to do a little bit of a shorter stitch on your zigzag just to give it more strength. And when we start, make sure you back stitch and forward stitch over this point a couple times. And so stop just a little short of the end, so that way we can make adjustments about where we're finishing everything off. That way we can trim this, fold it under, and then stitch it. So the next step is laying out the pockets for the paintbrush handles before we go ahead and stitch them. So now we're ready to lay out the pockets for the paintbrushes, and then we'll take that over to the sewing machine and stitch those. Okay, so we have all the paintbrushes laid out in the caddy where I want them to go. I have them grouped in the types of brushes that they are, so they're together by style and size, and you can organize your caddy any way that works best for you. So now we want to determine the size of our pockets. And it looks like, for the most part, from about here to the end, I think we can get away with the same size. We have a few fatter ones here, but if we make the pockets a little oversized here, when it gets to those, there'll be enough fabric, they pucker up and they'll work. I'm looking at my ruler, and I was thinking, if I make these pockets 3/4 of an inch, I think that will accommodate these big ones, certainly will accommodate the smaller ones. So just start from the side stitching, make a mark. For me, I'll make a mark every 3/4 of an inch until I get to here. And then I was looking at these brushes. Each one is actually going to have a custom built pocket. because I'm looking at, I'd say a little bit more than an inch for that one. Definitely an 1.25 inches there, probably 1.5 inches. It's a little thicker on that one. This will be, good 2.5 inches for that, and 3.5 for that. So I'll start laying those out, and then when I'm done, we'll take it over to the machine and I'll show you how to stitch it up, and then we'll finish off with the strap. Well, actually, we'll take care of any excess fabric that we have, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll attach the strap, and then we'll attach Velcro to the strap, and then we'll be done. All right, let's start marking these out. And I'm using a white pencil. And then what I plan on doing is, once I get the bottoms all marked off, I'll draw a straight line using a square ruler to help me give me a good square straight line. And that's where we'll stitch the pockets, is on that line. All right, so there's all my marks. Get rid of the brushes now. Take our square ruler, just kind of line it up to your, actually, let me do it that way. So because this is a quilting ruler, if you're fortunate enough to have one, you can use the ruler marks within the quilting template ruler to help square up all your pockets for the caddy by lining up to your stitching on the outside. So that means I have to turn this over. All right, so there's all our pockets laid out. So let's take it over to the machine and we'll get those stitched up. All right, back at the machine here. So when you sew these pockets in, do a zigzag the same as we did around the side and the bottom edge, and then make sure you back stitch a few times. Actually, wouldn't hurt here at the top transition, and then really give it a good back stitch at the bottom. And when you've calculated these pockets, try to leave into account the width of your zigzag stitch. If your machine has adjustments for that, make a narrow and then also a close zigzag stitch just for extra strength. You can roll it up ahead of time, actually make a neater little bundle out of it outside your machine. There you go, roll it like that, then stick it in. Okay, so then this way we can start at the bottom, finish at the top, back stitch a few times, trim it, and then just move back down and we'll work our way out. All right, so I'll put this on high speed and we'll just zip right through this. Enjoy the music. All right, so there's all our pockets sewed in. And so what you might want to do now is double check, make sure they all fit. I actually noticed I had a couple down here that seemed like they were going to be a little tight, so I adjusted the width of those pockets. Anyway, so now just go ahead and trim off all your loose threads that you have from your starts, and then we'll start working on finishing it all up. Okay, so we've sewn in all our pockets, and so we have the excess here that we left just in case. What I'm going to do with my caddy is I'm just going to cut it here. I'll cut it a little bit long so I can then fold that under to hem it, and then I'll just stitch it along this finished edge, and that'll leave a large pocket for another brush or some supplies or anything else I might need the space for. And that's why we stopped our stitching here short, so we can take this and tuck it under. But for now, I'll just finger press it. Because first we want to get our strap in there. So we can put that in, then we'll stitch along here, and then I'll lock in that strap. But so we can learn how long to make the strap, let's get all the brushes in the caddy and then roll it up, and then we can determine how long to cut our strap. All right, so there's all the brushes in the caddy. Let's roll that up. Snug. All right, take your strap and take your finished end and overlap that a good inch and go around. So you overlap that, I'd say a good 4 inches or more. And just mark that by holding it with your thumb. And that's where we need to cut it to make it the right length for this caddy. I say everyone's caddy is going to be a little different, just depends on the number of brushes, how big your bundle is. All right. So that will get tucked into our pocket here. And that'll get sewn together. So let's open that up. Get our hem tucked back under. Now what you might want to do is just put a pin right on that to hold that in place. Now let's make sure we've got our straps centered. So we are 11 1/2, so be right about there. Okay, let's get a pin on that. All right, that holds that in place, so we can get that stitched. Pop that right in there. All right, let's go back over our strap and just run that one more time here to strengthen that up. That's that. Strap is secured. Okay, rid of that. Okay, so now all we need to do is attach our Velcro. All right, so the way I like to figure out where my Velcro needs to go is simply take the strap, go around, take our Velcro. All right, so and it doesn't matter if you put the hook or the loop first. So the fabric part of the hook and loop I like to put first. So find a comfortable spot close to the bottom of the strap, but give it a little room. Make a little bit of a mark so you just know where to stop and start it. And so that part of the Velcro goes on your face up side of the strap. Then the hook part would go on the underside, and calculate where that needs to go. So that would go approximately there. So that would get sewn on there. All right. So let's open this up so we can get to everything. And stitch around that to secure it really well. And still with a zigzag stitch. So that's that one. Flip it over. Now stitch on the hook part of your Velcro. Okay, trim that off. Okay, there you have a custom paintbrush caddy. All right, so that's the end of that project. Let's go back to the desk and we'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about our next project. Okay, Busters, well, I hope you enjoyed that project. Hey, if you did like it, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do. Tell your friends about it, and that really helps out my channel as well. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for upcoming videos. And speaking of upcoming videos, I had a request from one of my subscribers. I am always happy to hear from my subscribers, any comments you have to make, and suggestions for future videos. And this one comes from Miss M. Yes, you know who you are. You asked for a rag rug demonstration video. And so, sure enough, I am going to give that to you next time. Actually, it'll be a two-parter, because there are two different methods of making rag rugs, and I'm going to demonstrate both of those to you. So come back next time, because this is a good project for getting rid of scrap fabrics that you have in your stash. All right, thanks for viewing, and don't forget, peace out, baby, and go and bust out some art.